Okay, mistake number 2, using the wrong gears. So we do see this all the time, people just grinding too hard, or on the other end, you do see people just kind of spinning totally inefficiently. So it's a common one, isn't it?
Yeah, do you remember you got started and we went for a spin in Kinsale and we were coming up to a real steep hill, and that was the first time it ever just dawned on me, not everybody understands how gears work. Now, we're blessed because when you've come into cycling, it's like my nephew being born into AI age. You've come into the effect of AI age in cycling. We've such a gear choice. You know, my first bike was, and people in the comments, you know, I'll go, oh Jesus, that's not even all, but I was on a 10-speed Ultegra was my first race bike.
And we're now up to 12 speed, 13
speed, yeah. We're 13 speed, 12 speed, depending on what groups you're running. But the main thing that's happened there is the range. Like I was running an 1121. Yeah, 21 is the middle of the block on a lot of these SRAM blocks at the moment. So you have so much range because they have a 10 sprocket. So if you're in a line out, if you're full gas, even a gravel bike where I'm running something like a 50 on the front or a 48 on the front, depending on the event. And down the back though, you have a 10 sprocket, which means you're never going to be spun out. You're always going to be able to hold on in a line out. And then you have that range where even if you come to the steepest pitch and you've totally blown, you have effective mountain bike gears where, you know, you could go up a wall on these things. If you can't get up a wall on the SRAM stuff, like you need a ladder, not more gears, because they have so much range on it now.
I think people find gearing quite complicated. You're talking about sprockets, you're talking about, you know, teeth, all of this kind of stuff. It can be a little bit daunting, particularly for newer people, to figure all of this out. I do think that if you're finding that you're running out of gears on your spin or your location, if you live in a very hilly spot, or you know you have to climb out of a valley, or your cadence is super high all of the time and you don't have any push on the downhills, you really do, you know, it'll make such a difference to your training if you look into this and change your gear selection.
Yeah, and we actually ordered some tools as part of Sarah's preparation for Badlands. I'm trying to get her to be a little bit more self-sufficient with bike maintenance. We ordered some tools for changing a cassette, and really simple, like having a chain whip and the tool to go with the chain whip to take it off. You can interchange cassettes quite easily now. You know, when I was racing the first few years, I would have had a bunch of different cassettes, you know, one for a hilly stage, and even you text into the group chat to the mechanic the night before what gearing you wanted for the next day. Now that's not really a thing because you have such range on the gears. So if somebody is riding a bike at the moment and they're feeling like I'm spun out on the downhills or I can't climb on the uphills, I would say starting to move to the newer stuff, like moving in. I think SRAM has launched the new We're Boat Riding Red, but they're launching Rival and Force. They're taking the technology from that and it's dripping down now into the lower ones, as it always does. So I would encourage people to just go into your local bike shop and ask about that stuff.
Tell them your problem. Tell them that you feel like you need more gears, and they will definitely help you. I'm on SRAM at the moment, and as you said, they have pushed a really wide range of gear in at the moment, so I can really I can only recommend them. Okay. The other thing I do see a lot of people doing on the group ride is not using their gears enough, like not shifting proactively. This is definitely something I did at the very beginning as well. And I remember really vividly being out in the group spin with one of the kind of OGs here, Sean McKenna, and he you could tell he was watching me, you know, as I was cycling. Then the following week he was like, Sarah, you're the most improved rider, you actually changed your gears this week. And it is something as a newbie that you can be quite nervous about. So being proactive, using your gears, but also knowing when to go down or up.
A little bit of that's bike handling as well, I think. I was chatting with a newbie on the group ride last week about this very thing. And one of the reasons they weren't shifting as frequently, you want to, as you say, proactively shift. So if you're coming into a corner and you anticipate you're going to need to scrub speed coming out of the corner, you want to be shifting into a slightly easier gear. So you're shifting left paddle, slightly easier gear. You're going up the block. I know the terminology is kind of confusing, but you do get it when you start consistently staying with it.
I think it's easier to say go into an easier gear or a harder gear for
so
the moment.
Easier gear goes up the block, harder gears go down the block. So you're going up the block. If you anticipate you're slowing down, you're going to have to accelerate and come back up to speed out of the corner. Likewise, if you're coming straight road, you're turning 90-degree turn into the start of a climb, you're going to anticipate that you're going to need to shift before that. But chatting to the newbie, they were saying they actually struggle to shift. They can't drink because they can't get their hands off the bars, and they really struggle to shift. But I was saying sprint shifters are the key there, the programmable buttons. Like I have mine programmed to change up my bike computer, but you can program to change gears as well. So it's like literally a squeeze of the hoods changes. So I think technology is enabling people, even that don't have skills or skills that haven't developed yet.
Yeah, because if you're nervous on the bike, as you said, bike handling's not great, and you're even trying to get from the big ring to the little ring, sometimes that can be like quite a push depending on how well you're maintaining your bike. That
used to be a race breaker. You come over the top of a climb in a little ring and you get over the top and it plateau to the point where you know you need to go into the big ring. And then you had a moment that was race defining where you're like, I'm going to shift to the big ring. Is the chain going to drop? And it would drop like 5 times out of 10.
Yeah, you're like just praying that it wouldn't.
The chain gods.
The chain gods, exactly. Yeah, so knowing when to change, being proactive, but actually using all of your gears. Again, that's something that I'm seeing constantly on rides at the moment, particularly, as you said, with people who are new to the sport. Okay, we move on to mistake number 3.
Do it.
Pacing. Pacing all wrong, too hard, too soon, or always in the grey zone, or as we like to call it, headless chicken riding.
Powermeters make a massive difference with this. And I kind of reverse it and say they make a massive difference, but then you become too reliant on it. I think a great exercise is to learn how to pace a time trial. Because if you can learn how to pace a time trial, we started running a Sunday time trial in the club twice a month. And you actually haven't come out to it yet. But if you understand the finish line is 16 kilometers, 10 miles away, I have to distribute my effort evenly over the course of that distance. So I'm empty at the finishing line and I couldn't have went any harder. You can then, I think, start to figure out, okay, I'm doing a 50 kilometer ride. I'm doing a 100 kilometer ride. I'm trying to cover this distance in as fast as possible. And you can kind of use one to benchmark against the other. I think learning to pace a time trial is a skill that a lot of newbies think is only for advanced riders because they think a time trial has to be aero helmet, TT bike, tricked out Rule 28 speed suits. It doesn't have to be that. It's a race against the clock. And essentially what it is learning to pace.
It's so difficult. Remember last year I was doing a time trial and on one of the online platforms every Tuesday.
Yes.
16-mile time trial.
16K.
16K. Oh my God, that was so difficult. But as the weeks progressed, I got so much better at it because I wasn't shooting straight out of the block, burning all the matches in the first 10 minutes and just kind of relaxing into it and actually having a little bit to push harder at the end.
And when you get good at them, like your cluster or your variance between your worst one and your best one, there's very little in it. Like I was doing them, it was last season as well, where I was doing it with one of my buddies, Ed Veal, the real deal Veal, shout out, he's been on the podcast. He was running a weekly time trial, a 10 miler. So every week, now he was smoking me. He was hitting like 420, 425 watts for the 10 miler. But every week I was between 395 and 402 watts. Like no, like it might be 395. Then I go, oh, I had a good week and it's 397. And that variance it's like a sniper, just that on the board, boom, boom, boom. The spread between the bullets is just so narrow when you get good at pacing them.
So much fun though. The other thing that I really struggled with when I began was pacing up a climb. Because remember, again, down in Kinsale, I blew the matches all in the first I'm going to say 50 meters, and then you had to push me up the rest of this climb that was about, a kilometer. But that's another thing as well, is just like saying to yourself, right, I'm going to hold this back here. There's a long way to the top, and I'm just going to hold a few cards close to my chest and hang on and then finish strong.
But even thinking about your two interval efforts you had today, you 2 by 15 minute threshold, and I haven't looked at the power file yet, but just chatting to you after, you were saying that you done roughly 270, 260, 270 watts for the first one, but you're like, oh, I didn't go anywhere near hard enough. Or sorry, you done that for the second one. You're like, I didn't go anywhere near hard enough for the first one. It's understanding that as well, saying, okay, I have 2 efforts. I have 5 efforts, and I'm trying to get out an even distribution of effort. So my first effort and my 5th effort are quite similar. Starting to do that, I know these feel like advanced moves that like, oh, only pros do intervals or racers do intervals. But when you start to understand how to pace a 5-minute effort, a 15-minute effort, then you start to understand how to pace your fondo at the weekend or your Wicklow 200 or whatever event you're doing.
100%, because as you do more and more of them, you learn about yourself, you learn how you can push yourself, and that, I totally agree. Just do efforts.
And then I think road racing, when you jump into it, even if it's club league, it brings a totally different dimension to that. Like one of the guys I'm coaching that's coming from being a very high level runner across the cycling, you're actually trying to knock the pacing out of him. He's got too good at pacing. He spent his whole life going, okay, a 14-minute effort is 5K. So now if I'm doing a race, I need to pace this over it. But the reality of road races is it's fits and starts. It's, it's hard on a crosswind. It's easy in the headwind. It's hard on the climb. It's easy on the descent. So the pacing, it's still there, but it's more dynamic. This episode today has been supported by BIKMO Cycle Insurance. Insure your ride with BIKMO today, and they'll donate £10 to Trash Free Trails to support their work in protecting our planet. Head to BIKMO, BIKMO.com, and use the code ROADMAN to get covered and support our wild spaces. Terms apply.